about? I'll speak up. Okay.
Weissman, 2214 Marigold. I just wanted to come and give my support and my support to all of you, fire, and to all the departments who have been working so hard. You just come by and say hi. Watch you enjoy your brand new chairs, which look beautiful, which I didn't get to enjoy. But anyway, that's all. Thank you for all your hard work, everybody.
Thank you. Is there anyone online on the Zoom who would like to make any comments? Last opportunity. If not, we will go to the minutes. October 8th council meeting. Anyone have an observation about that one?
I move to approve the minutes as presented, Your Honor.
Got a motion
Second.
and a second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. How about the October 10 special city council meeting?
Move to approve those as well.
Got a motion
Second.
and a second. Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, wonderful. Thank you. Vouchers, Cindy.
Total vouchers of $1,017,608.41.
Your Honor, the Finance Committee reviewed the vouchers in our Finance Committee meeting and there were no issues, so I make a motion to approve as read.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Claims for damages, none. No small contracts, no information items, appointments, and now we are at action items. Cindy. Do you want to introduce the public hearing? You want me to open it before you start? Okay. Open the public hearing on our budget property tax levy.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. I feel like I'm that person on, NBA or NCAAs. Well, here we go, because here we are with all these public hearings you're going to be hearing about in about the next 4 meetings. So we'll do our best to keep you entertained, but please stop and ask questions as you see fit, or you can always wait, whatever you'd like to do. The first one we're going to talk about is our required public hearing on our property tax levy. This is required by state law that we hold this public hearing to tell you what we're thinking about and what we are looking for our property tax levy for the year 2025. Make this littler because it drives me crazy. Oh, there it is. Okay, so there we are. We're at our property tax public hearing. We're going to discuss a variety of things. We're going to our levy lift, assess valuations, how we calculate property taxes, what they looked at like for 2024, and what we're estimating them to be for 2025. By the way, if you're looking online, I have this as a little tab on your OneNotes if you guys are trying to follow along. Right up there by the main, I think it says City Council. I want to talk about our levy lift first. So our most recent levy lift passed in 2021. As you know, that we dedicate all of that to public safety. What that did for us we had a fairly large property tax, our assessed valuation increase in 2023, and we were able to capture that for that levy lift, which was nice. Now, as you recall, the levy lift that was passed has a maximum increase that it can be 6%. What that means is you look at the levy lift from the current year, and then there's 6% on top of that that we can take, that we can assess for the next year. And that's a 6-year levy, has an end date. On a regular lift, there is a 1% increase that we are allowed to take. That is by state law. And what that means is, like on our current general levies, a little over 2 million. So our 1%, we basically get $20,000 more. So we are limited by that in state law on how much we can increase those taxes. I believe that was in referendum 747, I believe is what limited that to 2%. Prior to that, it was a 6% rise as well, but we are now at 1% annually. We are looking at, for 2025, our proposed levy, is, you can read that, 1,111,000. This is for the levy lift portion. I want to talk a little bit about that, the history of it. So we've levied over $5 million. We've spent over $5 million. It's awesome. We get that in. We have some things that we annually allocate for police and fire. And then what money's left over, they kind of ask for, and then the mayor and Mark look at that, and then they decide what we're going to spend that levy lift on. But we have 9,300 left over to carry into next year, or unless something comes up in 2025 that they request the use of that for. I think $5 million is pretty impressive, though. This shows when we started in 2016, and we go up to that blank spot in 2021. Those of you who were on council in 2021, you will remember that that's when Department of Revenue came in and said, well, we don't like the way that we're doing that. And so we could not levy that in 2021. And then we had to pay that money back, as you recall, in 2022. So, so we went up for the first 6 years. So we are now in year 4 of the second levy lift that has been approved. This is just another way to look at it, what's been used by police and fire in all of those years. And all the different uses. I have that broken down into basically 4 main categories for police and 4 main categories for fire. You know, there's a big one up there for the fire engine reserve. Remember that we're paying debt service on the fire truck out of the levy lift. And then we're also saving money towards another fire truck out of the levy lift. When we first got the levy lift, we immediately put police detective in there. So we've had some more personnel costs in the police than we have in fire. We've started to bring some of that forward in fire now, but we've been able to do equipment and saving. And like I said, our debt service and improvements in both police and fire, they've been able to use that money, and they've been very careful about stretching it as far as it can go too when they have requested it. So they've been really good stewards of that. For 2025, we'll be using a little over 1.1 million. And that's where it's at right now. The biggest piece of that sits in the firefighter and volunteer program. That's 2 firefighters, plus it's actually both of our 2 assistant chiefs. And it's also the whole volunteer program is paid out of the levy lift as well, including our debt service, some personnel up in the police department, 2 personnel there. And then they have some ongoing equipment and training that we pay every year out of that. Our assessed valuation. I went back to 16, bringing it forward. Y'all remembered in 2023 when you got your tax notices, that was a huge increase. As Cheney was one of the biggest increases in all of the county. Mark and I went in and met about that. Thought that was interesting, and they did tell us, yeah, we were one of the biggest out here. So that went up to that 1.1 billion. However, that doesn't mean we have all this money coming in from property taxes, because we're still limited to that 1% increase. So if you're sitting at, let's just say an example, you're sitting at, $1 million on property taxes, you can't go up just because all of a sudden you have this 36% increase. Taxes we received did not go up 36%. The taxes we received still went up that 1% limitation. And that's an important thing to remember. We had a little bit of an increase in 24, and we've had a little bit of a decrease in 2025 projected. That has to do with some reassessments in some of our commercial and multifamily areas. We did contact the county assessor about that, and that was the explanation that they gave us. But overall, that average growth from 16 is still 9.67. That's really strong. And that's looking really good for us. So this is actually 2023 and 24. And I just like to put this slide up here so you can see what you're paying for different things. The top 4 lines are us, city, our general, our lift, our EMS levy, and our GO bond that started in 2024. And then the rest of the stuff that comes on your tax bill. I have no way of knowing what the rest of that stuff's going to be for 2025. I can only guess. And I usually, when I look at this on my next slide, I take the same stuff for the county and the school district and the state and just use those same dollar amounts, because I have no way of knowing what their levies are going to be at this point. But I can figure out what ours are going to be. So you can see the biggest increase in ours had to do with our GO bond that the citizens approved. That was at 53%, 53 cents per thousand for 2024. And this is just the percentages of what each of those entities are on your tax bill of what you're paying. Calculating your property tax. So you take the value of your home, your assessed valuation, you divide that by 1,000, and then you times it by the levy rate. It's very easy to do. They also explain that really nicely on the county assessor's website. So happy to show you. They have a really nice piece on that on the assessor's office. But for an example, for our 2023 and have them up there. The city share of the levy in 2023 was 672, went up to a little over 1,000 in 2024. A good chunk of that though, you know, you have the general obligation bond that was the extra 53 cents that was on there. On this one, and thank you for the correction, Councilmember Bartels, because he found my error on this. But so if you started back in 2020 with a $250,000 home, based on what these increases were in assessed valuation, and not everybody went up the same. I mean, some people were up, you know, these are averages that we look at. But if you went up what those averages were, that might put you at about a $400,000 home now, which is great. That's great for you. But that does mean you're going to pay a little bit more on your taxes. So you can look at the whole taxes and then what the city's share of that will be. I do have what I'm estimating the cities to be there of that one. $423,000 home will be about $1,500. So specifically for our general property tax levy, it's a little over $3 million. That's broken down into our regular levy and the levy lift. The county separates those now for us since one of them raises at 6% and one of them raises at 1%. So they keep track of those very separately. We are now at 66 and 34% for a breakdown. When we first started with the levy lift was 23%. So it's growing at a higher rate. So it's actually receiving more of our total tax bill. For EMS, this is year 1 of 6 years on our EMS levy. That means it will go in at 50 cents at our current assessed valuation. So we're anticipating about $597,000. Our GO bond, we're going from 53 cents in 2024 to 47 cents per thousand for 2025. Basically because we got a great interest rate when we sold those bonds. And that's pretty much the tax levy. It's a lot of information throughout you. I totally understand that. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Anyone? No questions? So there are no questions. We'll close the public hearing. And so staff is asking for the first reading of this item.
We'll
No.
do that later on in the council meeting.
I'm sorry, do that later. I apologize.
Oh, I think we needed to open that up to the public. I have to have any comment on that.
Pardon?
I think we should have opened that up to the public.
Oh, I'm sorry. When I said, oh,
Did ask. I guess.
when I said,
Okay,
any questions? And
Okay,
I looked both
awesome.
ways. I
okay, no, I'm
meant
good.
everyone. I
I'm good.
apologize. Anyone on our Zoom or in the room who is interested in asking a question? I apologize. Hearing none, we'll do that again. So the next public hearing on governmental revenues. Open.
Thank you. I'm trying to pull that up here. Hold, please. Here. This one's a little longer. And I know I talk fast, so holler at me to stop if you would like me to elaborate. But we're going to go over all of our governmental revenues, not just our general fund, but everything that's in our governmental side. So we go over what is governmental or enterprise. We kind of went over this at our budgeting 101, but all of this stuff, some of it's enterprise, some of it's governmental, obviously the treatment plant and water, those are going to be enterprise. But the rest of this stuff between streets, council, police, fire, you guys, and of course our pool, those are all governmental. All those revenues come into play here. It's about as creative as I get, so that's about it. Breaking down, this red here, all this stuff is gonna fall under the general fund when we talk about that. But then we're also gonna talk about this purpley is all about the fire department and their various funds. The street has 5 funds that they operate. Police has several funds that they operate, and then there's all this other stuff that's also going to include the stuff we get from our pool construction, our debt service, IT, kind of miscellaneous stuff. And of course, Parks and Recreation, almost forgot about. Our total revenues, including our cash carryover that we're estimating into 2025 is over $39 million. You can see the biggest chunk of that is those restricted. So this beginning fund balance is both our restricted and our available cash that we're bringing into 2025. We bring all that in as a revenue, and then of course, we're going to reserve that has to be reserved on the backside on the ending fund. But this just gives you a better idea of all the money that's going to flow through the city. As outside of beginning fund balance, you can see the taxes for 27%. That is just a lot of what funds governmental operations are taxes.
Cindy, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Is that including enterprise?
Nope, this is just governmental. We're not going to talk about enterprise funds at all today.
Okay, so maybe I'm just, help me out, sorry. Last meeting when we talked about the spreadsheet that you gave us and we had,
That was general fund only.
oh, okay, that was general fund, the 11,954,000, okay,
This is everything.
everything.
That
Okay.
includes it that's termed governmental. This one takes out that beginning fund balance, and I think it's a little cleaner. It shows you the taxes of that are this big section right there. I think what kind of skews this off right now is this debt proceeds, because we're going to get another $5 million in debt and bond proceeds for our pool. And that kind of skews the whole revenues. Obviously, those won't be there next year, but so for our general fund as a whole, 15 million in revenues, and then that whole governmental is 39. I talk a lot about cash carryover, that beginning fund balance. So I tried to break this out between what actually is cash that's spendable and what are restricted reserves. Whoops, where'd that go? Come back. There. And you can just kind of see that aquatic center is obviously restricted. Lodging tax is restricted by law. Parks and Recreation, we have some of that restricted. That's their 25% reserve. Streets has some restricted, that's a reserve in there, but most of the stuff is spendable, although it might be in a different fund. For instance, the Criminal Justice Fund has some sales tax in it, but it can only be used on criminal justice approved functions. So there we are with that restricted and that total funds. There's a lot of these types are not made up by me. These are made up by the Government Accounting Standards Board, and our state auditor audits to those. So these are the types of revenues we have. Taxes. Property sales and utility is what makes that up. They are so general property tax and levy lift, those come into our general fund. EMS levy has its own special revenue fund that we account for those for transparency. So I can show that those are coming in and show what those are being paid on. And then of course our general obligation bond. So I'm showing you what we budgeted for 24, where we were at the end of September when I made this slide, or the first week of October, and then what the budget is for 2025. Same type of table you're going to see for all of this. I'm going to show you where we budgeted in 24, where we're at, and then what that budget looks like for next year. General sales, that's sales tax. That brokered natural gas actually comes through as a sales tax. That public safety sales tax, I think that's on your ballot this election. There's criminal justice sales, lodging. Those are all term sales taxes, but they're all doing fine. the one that is brokered natural gas. I talked a lot about that. I talked a lot about it last meeting, and that is a significant decrease. That affects the general fund, it affects park and recreation, and it affects the residential street.
Cindy, do you know what that rate is? I forget. The rate stays the same, it's just the volume that,
Actually, it has to do with their contract is what I
Oh.
was always. And that
Well,
was
that's
the
the problem.
contract they've negotiated. And I don't know that. No, I can just kind of go by what we're getting.
Cindy, that's Eastern's contract.
So, I mean, you look at that and yeah, we look like, and our sales tax have dipped a little. It's not a huge dip, it's a little dip. You can see in 2021, that dip was COVID. And then it popped back up again. So that green line's only through the third quarter. So as you look at that in that trend line, I think we'll finish out and we will meet the budget that we budgeted for 2024. Our utility taxes, these are the various utility taxes we have. The top four. Well, yeah, those all go into the general fund, and then 4% of utility taxes on residential street. That is the community voted for that. They received that, and the Parks and Recreation is 4.75. Parks and Recreation has been sunset. Residential street does. It's on its second 14. Have a slide on that here.
so go back real quick, I guess, on that utility tax. So that's actually a business and occupation tax.
Now, this utility tax right here is our, well,
No.
yes, it's
The
our
one above that.
6%.
1 point. Or the,
It's 1.2?
yeah,
Yeah, that's on your utility bill. That's what you're paying for your utility taxes, yes, for our utilities.
so generally they're for electricity, you're limited to 6%. If you want to go over that, then you have to go get voter approval, which the city did for parks and streets. Now, again, there's also capability by city council to increase the general utility tax on water, sewer, and garbage by council vote. And there's no limit on that. But I think we talked about that at our meeting, so when we show you utility tax, it is a business and occupation tax. I think it's recognized by the state as such. But there is, if you ever get in a pinch, that's available without voter approval, but it's when you don't want to just go out and put it in place and spend crazy money. Just as and we've always been very frugal on that, and we've gone out, the city has, with voter approval to increase.
So when we also have, you committed to rate increases in electric and water and sewer and garbage over a number of years to bring those utilities up. So that actually increases our utility tax as well, because if you're paying for your electric water. So I tried to capture some of that as well. This is the first residential street tax we had from 99 to 12 years. This is that little brokered piece at the bottom we get, and then the big one. I thought, so it kind of tops out right there, a little over 4. And I thought this was interesting, and that you can really see that it's been a good source of, it's been a good program for Todd. He's been able to do a lot with that. And we keep this in a separate fund, very specifically for transparency. So we can show what money, exactly what it has spent on. I'm a big believer in transparency, and I think that's the best way to do that. This particular residential street tax, though, actually ends in December of 2026. So if the council chooses to want to go back out for that, for our residential street, we'll have to put that before the voters again in 2026. And here's the same slide for Parks and Rec. Now theirs has no sunset, but you can just kind of see their ups and downs. You can see that little dip up there when there was COVID. But outside of that, it's been a nice funding source. It is also in its own special revenue fund for the very same reason, for transparency, so people can see where their money's coming into and exactly what it is being spent on. Licenses and permit, it's not a huge dollar amount. It's 0% of our whole, which is kind of it. But it doesn't bring in a huge amount of money most of the time. Building permits can though. Building permits, and when there's a lot of stuff going on, building permits can bring in some money, but we really do hesitate to plan on this big dollar amount over here. When I talked to Todd and asked for his crystal ball, you know, he's fairly conservative about that because he doesn't know what's going to come in the door, right? As far as a permit, he does know there is some housing that's going to be going in this year and next, and we tried to account for that. And here's their permit history. As I said, like back in 16, they were bringing in some money. But you know, it's rebounding again. This is through the third quarter again, and you can see that it is. You can see that it's popping back up from our low back in 20. Intergovernmental is anything that comes from another governmental agency, the state, feds, another city, the county, anything like that. It covers a whole bunch of grants. These are the basic things it covers. We'll just graph. The liquor profits on the top, you can see those are always, you know, and excise is about the same. Marijuana excise started popping in about 18. The city assistance is what happened. Well, it's city assistance when we lost destination. Well, when destination sales tax came into play, that came in so that to help us that didn't have as much sales tax. We lost sales tax equalization at the state, and that came in from the state, and that's about $100,000 or so that we receive from the state every year. That judicial, and it's bigger the last few years, that's that therapeutic court grant.
Hmm.
That's what's making that up. Emergency services is a reimbursement that we get when chief is tasked with going and managing a fire outside of our agency. We bill for his time back, and that's where that is, that emergency services. You can see those grants, and then you can see, of course, COVID in gold, but that is what that is. Charges for services. This is where we get a pretty good chunk of, a chunk of our general fund. Fire contracts, a big piece of that from Eastern. We get our probation and monitoring fees from the courts there. The finance executive, public's administration charges. I've talked about those a lot. That's what we bill back to the enterprise funds, to the utilities for our services. It's actually a pretty big revenue that comes into the general fund. And of course, I have a little graph on that. So that big one there is the fire contract. That has a riser in it, and it goes up by the fiscal growth factor every year. And I believe it's up for negotiation. And so after Mark and Chief renegotiate that again, that will take care of that. The rest of them kind of do their own little thing down there. Park and Rec fees. Park and Rec does a nice job. They offer a lot of courses, and they bring in some money. Of course, you can see what happened in COVID, but outside of that, like, they rebounded very quickly. And that's, Kelly does a nice job with that. Fines, this all comes from the court. Everything that they do that has a fee with it, they collect it, and then once a month they bring the money over to the city. You can kind of see where that is. Parking, that just is. So those are the parking meters that were up at Eastern, is what those are. And those parking meters, they share that money with us. And then, of course, then there's the fees for what they get tickets. And then there's, if they, we share the money for the tickets. If someone gets a parking ticket at a meter at Eastern and they pay that ticket, half that money goes back to Eastern. Or if they don't pay it and there's a late fee, we keep 100% of the late fee. And that's what the majority of our parking is now that's there. Miscellaneous is anything that's not identified someplace else. But obviously we've had some good interest the last couple of years from after being so pathetic for some time. It actually boosted up nicely in 2022. And this is through the third quarter as well. There's still 3 months left. We will have, so the streets, we have budgeted that the streets will receive $350,000 from the general fund. That goes to their operations so that they're able to maintain their 25% reserve as is required by our financial policy. And then, of course, we are expecting our $5 million second series of bond proceeds in March of next year. So all of that together, here it is. In those same categories, I have down here cash carried into the year. That's cash that's spendable. And then, of course, the restricted reserves, I'm still gonna show you what those are, but we're not going to budget those at all. And what does that pay for? It pays for all that. I know that's small, so I hope you're looking at that on your line. This big thing over here, though, is well, this is our ending fund balance. This is our parks, and that's because of building the aquatic center. I have to put it in there because that's what we're spending that money on. But after next year, that will totally redo that whole slide. I will say that as far as our revenues go, I monitor those pretty closely, pretty much every day. And I don't have a huge concern right now outside of our brokered natural gas tax that we're going to see a huge dip. We're going to see a couple small dips here and there. But I think that overall that we're going to meet all of our budgeted revenues for 2024. So I feel really comfortable with how we're budgeting for 2025. Happy to answer any questions you have on that.
Questions for Cindy?
Just one quick one.
Mhm.
Restricted reserves, is that the pool? It's the
n-
9 million.
It's all of that. Well, is that where you're at right here?
I think I'm on the one above, but
This
yeah.
one?
Yeah.
So it's
restricted-
part of that. So this 9.2 over here.
Yeah.
So yeah, part of that, except we plan on spending it all. So
Right.
bringing it in, there is
Yeah.
some that's left over, yes. So that's coming in as restricted. It can only be used for the pool.
Okay.
Anything that is specifically, park and rec, all those things are restricted for those usages. The only thing that really isn't restricted is our general fund, big pot of money, that
Right,
has to pay for so many different programs.
great. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Anyone in the audience have a question or anyone on our Zoom? Hearing nothing and seeing no hands. We'll go ahead and close this hearing. So let's,
I think you have police coming up first.
public safety budget presentations.
Go to agenda.
Yep, you're first.
We will open the public hearing on public safety.
Right here.
All right, well, thank you.
Yeah.
This was
So
interesting
go.
here for us, changing our complete department. A lot of transitions, so that's why I'm excited to go through all of this and kind of explain what we are.
You click it. Sure.
F5? Okay, the mission of the chief police department is to provide protection and law enforcement. Service everybody within the community. I think we do our level best. Very engaged with the community, and community policing is our. So far this year, for the police department, we present full-time, full service law enforcement responsibilities on routine, emergency, and we feel this mission for the department has embraced the community policing model. To fulfill that, we are so engaged with the community. Everybody's welcome to come take part of that. And then later in the year, we're going to have a different bicycle. So my point is that try to get in the we have we align ourselves with the community to help identify problems and issues in the community policing. That's what we can do. Work together. We've also reached out and worked as a partner with Airway Heights Police. fortunate enough, through beneficiary grant. Full-time police officer in mental health profession. Our group, our mental health professional, our co-responding unit, goes to the majority of the calls. Cheney unfortunately has a significant. We're grateful and very thankful that they can. 2024 accomplishments, and this was no small, this was a heavy lift by far. We realigned the command structure within the department. We did away with the captain position. Only one sergeant. Lieutenant. We had two openings for sergeant. We promoted two patrol officers to the rank of sergeant. We put a new detective in the detective's office along with a detective sergeant. And those two guys done such an outstanding job. We've had our this services departments down to a pretty low number. When I returned in 2022, we had 79 cases that were open. Right now, today, we're down to 27. Last week, we were up to 34. I mean, it can change. For that, we were down to 14, and then over a week, we got 16 cases. So they're doing a remarkable job in keeping those cases down. Transitioning to SHREC, or the Spokane Regional Communications Center. We're still working our way through some of the bugs in that. That was absolutely the right thing to do. I don't know if we're going to actually stay in the long haul services. Mark, it's outstanding. And we ended up losing 4 personnel up in the dispatch, and we retained 2. And those 2 positions were converted into a new position called police support specialists. And their responsibilities are very broad. Right now, they're very committed into the public disclosure realm, and they're doing such a good job that they're making their due dates remarkably quick. So I have 2 guys, but not that Kathy wasn't doing a remarkable job. For doing it all by herself, she was remarkable. I have 2 people that are doing it right. We're able to keep our head above water. That's not their only responsibility. Their other responsibilities are going to be the evidence room and a lot of other things. The big stumbling block that we had, the things that we've had the most difficulty with is people, an agency to take care of our access responsibilities, our records. Right now, Spokane City Records they're taking care of it. And what that entails is we have arrest warrants and we have protection orders. Things that are issued by the court. There has to be somebody available to answer the phone when law enforcement comes into contact. Have those issues. And we didn't have that ability. We no longer had the ability to have 24-hour coverage. And by the city of Spokane Records Department was so gracious, take over our responsibility. Originally, the MU was 60 days, 30-day addition. By golly, it was needed. I just got a contract today. So thankful that happened. So I'm going to have to talk nicely to them and see if they won't continue to do it for a few more days. Give me a break. And then once, like I said, once that's all done, then Lincoln County will take over those responsibilities once a contract is signed. Let's see, we took on 2 been outfitted and they've been issued. We are in the final phase of getting all of our have all the MDBs set up, and we have now 2 desktop computers set up. What that did was enable them to get into the new world system. That new CAD system is completely different than what we were used to or what we had, and it's a little bit. You need some training on it, and we needed people to get the training and be able to access those reports, to be able to fulfill their obligations with the public disclosure requests and the requests for data that I need to give us up-to-date information on where we are with our calls for service. You guys that are up there right now, Ben and Frank, are both doing a remarkable job with that. We've established like I said, we established a co-responder unit. And that's one police officer and one mental health professional. And with that, in the grant, we were able to get a car. Now that grant pays for everything except the maintenance on the car. So it pays for the salary and benefits of the police officer, the salary and benefits of the co-responder. But that's on a grant. I do not expect that grant to go away. In fact, there was a an inspection of our processes yesterday over at Airway Heights. And I do not anticipate we're going to get any. We're doing things the way we should be, and I do not see that funding go away. In fact, they use our model as kind of the flagship for other models around the state. So we're doing it right. We're doing a really, really remarkable job. Because we were able to get a grant funded position, work with that mental health professional, we were able to hire our 19th police officer to backfill the loss. And the whole purpose of that is to obviously to have enough people on the street, but also reduce overtime and fulfill the shifts that were mandated by minimum staffing requirements to fill. And then we developed a strategy to partner with community, because one of the biggest concerns they have, anywhere I've worked, and I've worked all over the state, is when the community, traffic is a concern for them, because the average citizen, the average person that lives within a community and goes back and forth to work every day, they really don't have any contact. Only contact they have is when they're in their neighborhood and somebody's driving recklessly through their neighborhood, and that's a big concern. And so we've developed strategy to address that, and our traffic enforcement has gone up significantly. But it also speaks about bad habits on the street. If we're stopping 530 cars, there's a lot. The last thing that we started, and one of the major accomplishments for 2024, started the accreditation program. We got it started. We're up and running. And now that we're in 2025, we're heading into 2025, we're going to continue that. And I believe, with the guidance and the drive of Lieutenant Oakes, we are absolutely going to get accredited before the end of the year. We're absolutely going to. He was working on it today. We're absolutely going to do it. For the goals of 2025.
Chief, before you go to that, if I may, do we still have those digital speed limit apparatus we set out?
Yeah, yes, we do.
So that's still, we have two of those? One.
We have one speed trailer. Yeah, we have one. It's not functioning right now.
Okay.
And I'll talk, and then we have like 22 vehicles assigned to the police department. One of them is that little truck, that little Colorado. I need that little Colorado so we can tow the whole trailer.
But it is still,
It's
other
still
than a
functioning.
battery, it should be.
That
ready.
just needs a battery. So for the goals of 2025, we want to get flock cameras, and I'll talk a little bit more about the flock cameras when we get into discretionary funds. We had a kind of a taste of what they can do. The county had some that they created with all that for a very short period of time this summer. And within the first hour of it being deployed, we recovered 2 stolen cars that came into the city. And then we got a guy that was being looked after for some very serious crimes out of the city. The major crimes unit was looking for him, and the violent felony task force was looking for him. And he turned out to be here in Cheney. Our guys arrested him over there by Zips. And the only reason we got him is he came across on a flock camera. So for 2025, I'll talk a little bit more about it during the discretionary funds. But that would be my goal, is to get flock cameras. And the thing about the flock cameras is they connect with the real-time center. So it's not just locked in. It's not information that's just here. It's going to connect us to everywhere else. This morning and all day, monitor the radio all day long, and all day, Spokane County, Spokane City, were reporting flock hits on stolen cars, wanted people all day. It's the most I've seen. We're going to fully implement the police support specialist program. They are really getting comfortable and when I designed that position, I wanted the position to have some meat to it. I wanted it to have some job satisfaction. And I wanted the guys that were in that position to feel like they were part of the department. And I think we fulfilled that. I think they're very enthusiastic about their current positions. They're not doing all of it yet because they've been bogged down so much with public disclosure. That's been their primary job. But fully implementing them with this in 2025 is going to mean that they're going to be into that evidence room, for example. Respond to search. They would take the evidence from the officers and then they would be logging it in. And right now I have 3 guys logging in at property over there. So that means that they're on the street, having the police support specialist take it from cradle to grave. That frees up a police officer to be out answering calls. So fully implementing that police support specialty position is going to be an important move forward for the department. We're going to try to reduce our overtime, and the way we're going to do that is we're going to have people that are coming off of long-term leave, and we're going to fill positions. We have 1 position that's vacant, and we have 2 people out on long-term leave. And I think those are going to, I know for a fact one of them is going to resolve in December, and the other one, I don't know when it's going to resolve. But once those positions are fully staffed, and we're actually staffed with full complement, full office, we're going to be better able to handle all of it. And I think we're going to be able to implement the traffic unit that I've been wanting. And the traffic unit is going to be an important part of the program because when we have traffic complaints, that's the person that I'm going to send to those particular places. And they'll also be dedicated to doing DUI emphasis, and they'll have to go get some special training in collision investigation. And so we'll have our in-house traffic specialists. So when we're at full complement, I think we'll be able to do that and accomplish that goal. We're going to be able to we're going to try to get 2 detectives in the detective's office. Once again, that's going to be dependent on that coming up to full staffing. And again, we're still going to be able to fulfill our obligations with filling shifts. Purpose of having the 2 detectives in the detective's office is to reduce the workload on the individual detectives. The complexity of the cases that they're working today, and even before I retired, those cases took an extraordinarily long time to investigate. A lot of them are very difficult and time consuming and very sensitive in nature and takes a long time. So having 2 people in there will be able to file cases quickly and bring them to a successful conclusion more successfully. We're going to increase our training budget the best we can to accommodate the requirements of the state. We're having more and more mandates, unfunded mandates from the state, requiring us to get more and more training. But even in and above that, we still have certification. Certification expire, and we have to send them to training to be able to do that. And most of that training is not in Spokane; it's over on the coast or elsewhere. We try to make the best of what limited monies we have available. What we'd like to increase our training budget, and the way we would do that is move money from one account as we see it, as we have it available, into that training account. We're going to into the fleet management. We have 3 cars right now that are old. I was here when we originally picked those up in 2013. I drove it from Seattle here. Those cars are getting worn out. We have one that I think we could use as a spare. The other 2 are going to cost a lot of money to keep them as a viable police vehicle. Police vehicles aren't like normal vehicles. They're driven completely different, and they have different mandates on them, different requirements on them. And they have a expiration date on them. Well, 2 of those cars have reached that expiration date. And I have a plan for one of them. Here's our current staff. I have to apologize. That's officer. currently on FMLA. She had a child, so she's gone, but this is our current staffing. So you can see one on FMLA, the other one shining in. This is the breakdown of effective corresponding unit, police support specialists, and engineers. And we have 2 patrol teams. There are five officers in each team, 6 officers in each team right now. Backed by a sergeant. That's not really the case. Well, like I said earlier, when you get the full complement. Here's just a little quick snippet of the co-responding unit. Again, it was from a grant, and they do so much. I can't even do it justice. I mean, they do follow-up, they get people the resources they need. And the whole goal is to get people out of the criminal justice system, to keep them out of the criminal justice system, give them the help they need. And it's a really, really big job for them, and they're doing remarkable. They're doing remarkable. Okay, here's the police budget, total budget for the police department. We increased the budget for anticipated increase in the budget of 2025 by about $7,000. But the breakdown is pretty much the same. We lost 4 personnel, so we're down to 21. Our overtime issue is still going to be with us for a while. There's no way of getting rid of it altogether. But again, once we get to full staffing, I think we can reduce it quite a bit. 17 employees right now that are eligible for overtime. And we're in the process of hiring a new officer that is coming to us from the Spokane County Sheriff's Office. So that'll bring us up to 18. So we'll have 18 eligible officers that would be able to get overtime. The 2 FTEs for the police support specialist, the $10,000 overtime. Applies that. Sure, we haven't used it as efficiently as we could have, and that would have made a difference on our budgeted overtime of $150,000. Prisoner transport, we essentially don't transport anymore because they have the in-camera, on-camera hearings, so we really don't transport people anymore. But that money is there available in case we do have to transport. So the equipment and the services, equipment and supplies makes up the bulk of our total budget. And in this particular budget, we're asking for $160,000 to replace 2 cars. This is non-existent anymore. The money that you see here has been reallocated throughout the budget. Budget, and you'll see that in a slide later. So, but this is the money that we once had for dispatch, and last year it was $598,000. So that money went out into other areas. The administration, under the administration part of our budget, that's where a lot of the services and special charges. We got salary benefits, vacation travel, rentals, copy machine, and we did have a porta potty at the firing range, but we decided to do away with that. Try to save a little bit of money. Our insurance went up because we got personnel. Our IT costs went up because we have more computers. So our budget is a little higher. Patrol general fund. This is the breakdown of $3,100,000. Roll up from 2024. Wages, travel and training and other things. And we hope to have, like I said, 18 FTEs. When we get to 18 FTEs, that'll make a big difference. General funds, general fund taxes, expenses that we have. This is the 11,000 is for our janitorial services and other services within the department. Supplies relatively meager. That's for diesel to run the generator and other things within the department. We have to have our building service, the HVAC and the people that come in and service the carpets and stuff. Account for about $33,000, utilities and so forth. So the general fund pays for a lot of the stuff that keeps our building what it is today. Which incidentally is a lot prettier than it used to be. It got painted this year. I know the painter. Okay, and here's the budget for under the criminal justice. Police force specialists are there with the firearms program. We have by far, in my humble opinion, the best firearms program in Spokane County, without a doubt. Our expectations are very, very high, and there's a reason for that. By golly, if you are carrying one of these things, you should be able to use it. You should be as proficient as you possibly can. And we have a program that ensures that our officers are able to handle their weapons as competently as anybody in the county or anybody in the state. Okay, this is the slide for the reserve balance and criminal justice, the CTED monies that we use also for the domestic violence overtime and such. And here's a discretionary request. First slide is for the vehicles. I already talked a little bit about them. We have 22 cars, 22 vehicles. Colorado that we use to haul things around. We have 2 administrative vehicles. My vehicle is it's an old vehicle. Chief Hensley got it when he first came to the department, so probably a 2010, 2011, but it runs fine. It looks good. And then Lieutenant Oakes's vehicle. 2 detectives' vehicles. They're aging, but they're able to keep them up and running. They're not really costing us a lot of money to maintain. The CRT vehicle, that was something that we got on the grant, but we have to maintain the service on it and pay for the fuel. And then we have 16 patrol vehicles. And of those, we're going to have to we're thinking about cycling out 2, maintaining one as a reserve. And then I want to convert one of the ones that needs a lot of repair, that's not really fit for patrol duty, into a mobile camera. It would be a flock camera. I think I'm sure everybody has seen them. Spokane County has them, has a pedestal and has a camera mounted on top. I think that would be something that we could really utilize here on two levels. First of all, if we have an area that we need to take a look at, maybe we have criminal activity coming in and out, we're able to pick up license plates. But the biggest reason that I want to do this is we have domestic violence victims that are afraid to go to their homes because there's a protection order in place. And they're afraid that their abuser is going to show up. We can put this camera out there and it'll pick up the plate. And if they pick up the plate, then that person committed a violation. It was a tool to help them get citizens. I'm very hopeful that maybe next year. So this year we're going to ask for 2 vehicles to outfit them, to purchase the vehicles, and then to outfit them is going to cost us about $160,000. Oh. Okay, the next one is the flock cameras. Total cost for the flock cameras over a 2-year period is about $57,934. $29,200 would be. I'm asking for 8 cameras, and we strategically identified locations around best benefit from the information that they can collect. Obviously, every road that comes in and goes out of Cheney would be a place that we'd want to have those cameras. And then down in Washington, 6 others, because of the school. And so we're not going to be able to pick up speeders. That's not the intent of them. The intent is to find out people who have a reason to be in the system for a protection order, for a warrant, or a stolen car, or some other violent offense. So the goal is to set it up in those areas, high traffic, to see if we can identify people engaged or coming into our community that may be engaged in criminal activity. Okay, so yeah, the first year is 29,200, the second year is 24,000. The other part of that is if we determine that we can't afford it, we can, it's not a contract, it's locked into. They can't afford it, they'll come and remove the cameras and we're out of it. I don't think we're gonna have to do that. I think this, they're a remarkable.
By me, I see the sheriff vehicle parked out by Forlex. Is that
Oh,
what
yeah.
that is?
Yes. With that pedestal in the middle.
Yeah. Very interesting. Now, it's all dependent on license plate number that if the bad guys find a different one and put it on their vehicle.
Yeah, yeah,
That's one way around that. Is that a?
can be, but if they find another license plate, like today, they caught, I know 2 cars that had switch plates on them. But those plates were also, reported stolen. So it came up with a stolen license plate. If somebody were to, now here's the other benefit of the flock cameras. Not only do they look at license plates, they capture the car.
That's what I'm
They
saying. They
also
also can
capture-
make a model.
They're also captain the making the model, but they also, on occasion, angles right, the sun is right, the light is right, they capture the driver. And that's part of the thing. So let's say we have an incident that happens in Cheney. And there's a 2008 Chevy Mustang or Ford Mustang that was involved, red in color. So they give that to the real-time center, they'll punch that information in, all of a sudden, man, we got a red Mustang, 2008 red Mustang heading out. Well, that's something for us to go on, something for us to look at. Then we can pick him up on other cameras throughout the city. I'll give you an example. Not too long ago, I was traveling to Spokane. Right, passing over the W line, passing through this turn lane and everything. I was almost to Four Lakes and 2 of them went, and the speed limit out there is 50. They went blowing by me at like 80 miles an hour. Well, I'm really not equipped to do that. There's some things that people do that I just cannot abide by. So I turned that car around and I went after them. And Lieutenant Oakes falsely accused me of being in pursuit. But I really, I was not. I was not. My lights and siren were on, but I was not in pursuit. I was just asking people to get out of my way. That was what I was doing. Me all the way, it took me all the way down to Jensen Road to get them stopped. Well, I got them stopped and of course they got certificates of achievement. And then we went to the flock cameras in that black SUV that I was chasing. They tracked that thing all through Spokane. It was over on Napa. It was up in Hilliard and that thing had been driving around all day. That's the benefit of it. It's not just the city, the things that happen within the city, because this is a very large community. And Cheney is a very welcoming community. And some of the people who take advantage of our good nature. So yeah, that's the benefit of that is it's very, there's a lot of things that we can do with it.
So if we do the block thing, that would be integrated with all the block in the county and the city and everyone that, do we have interlocal agreements? How does that work?
Yeah, you sign over once we get the flock cameras, you sign over an agreement that the data that you collect will be available to the flock system. And Spokane City and Spokane County, Airway Heights, Liberty Lake, they all have the same thing, an interlocal agreement just like that.
So the software cost isn't just software, it's also for the administration of.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
It goes because the actual camera, it's like your home security system. If you buy a camera, I just recently had to buy one. You don't buy the camera. It's the data that you carry. The camera is almost essentially free. And that's essentially the case here. The cameras, the equipment itself, called advanced technology, but that's not the expensive thing. It's the data and the sharing of the data. So that's what it's a service agreement with everything. That's what costs so much money.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, the next one, I get past. The next one is oh, I'm going the wrong way. Okay, the next one is, we need 2 computers for the investigative unit. And the computers that I'm asking for have the capability of examining large amounts of data. Large, I'm talking very large. A lot of these cases, and I'm talking ICAC cases, the internet crimes against children type of cases, so you can imagine what kind of cases these are. It's not uncommon at all to get storage devices, data storage devices that contain thousands and thousands of images. We had one earlier this year, they had 90,000 images. And for the average desktop computer to be able to go through that is impossible. It locks up the computer. It takes you forever to do it. And then in and above that, all of our desktop computers are linked into our network. And I'm fearful, while it's unlikely, there's a possibility that some of that data that's super sensitive in nature could migrate into our network. And then there would be images of things that nobody really wants to. These 2 computers that I'm asking for would be dedicated strictly to that, would not be on our network, and would have the capability going through those 90,000. Got an estimate from Executech, and it'll be between 3,500 to about 4,000 for two. And I'm hopeful it'll be less than that, but it'll be around $3,000 to $4,000. I think it's a good tool to have. It'll speed up those investigations tremendously. Sergeant Campbell just had to process one, and it took him, gosh, a month to get through it. And it largely because the computer couldn't handle it, just couldn't handle it. Okay, radar units is the next one. Handheld radar units. All of our police cars have radars in them, but when we're doing patrol in residential neighborhood, having an antenna mounted in the front and back, you have north and south covered. What about the cross streets? And when we're sitting out there, oftentimes we're fully exposed. To have a handheld radar unit gives you a lot more flexibility on where you can use it and the places that you can use it and be effective. So I'm asking for 2 handheld units. So one of those obviously would be dedicated to the traffic unit that I really. And the last one is going to be the accreditation. We are really in it right now. The $3,000 I'm asking for, which is down $2,000 from last year, because they used to, when I was doing it before, they would do on-site investigations. Now it's all on a computer. So they prep it up by looking at all of our data on the computer, and then they come out on-site. So it's a little more, it's a little cheaper than what it used to be. So I'm asking for $3,000 for the accreditation part of it. That's it. If you have.
I do have a question. You kind of touched on this, but we've talked about this kind of, I'm not trying to beat anything to death here, but we've talked about it in Public Safety Committee a lot. And I didn't see any requests for additional officers. And I know you kind of mentioned overtime, but I'm just wondering if like when you're fully staffed at 18 or 19, is that truly going to take care of like training, injuries, sick time, Kelly days, like, or because it seems like we can't really catch up?
No, it won't take care of any of that.
Okay.
But what it'll do, once we are up to the 18th, actually 19 commission is what we're at. Then that also includes Lieutenant Oakes and 2 detectives. So men on the street is including the sergeants. Whenever anybody's off for whatever reason, we're still going to have to backfill that with when we approach the city, we will again to get 2 additional officers. Then we would have the ability to do the Kelly Day is a big, heavy lift. I mean, that's every officer that's assigned to patrol essentially gets a Kelly Day. That's supposed to be that. We can do that. They work with Kelly Day. 12-hour overtime shift for everybody in the department, but everybody working patrol in the department at a time. So when we get to full staffing, no, we'll still have those issues. And then we can explore avenues to maybe at one point be able to bring on two additional. And if we're ever able or fortunate enough to do that, then we can make a significant impact on the overtime.
Okay, because consistently, I know we talked about, it's been 200, it's been very expensive for the last 10 years. Right, okay.
Average, if you take the COVID years out of the picture, it's usually about 120,000. High water mark was 2022 and it was like 184,000 over. Our budgeted overtime for patrol is 150,000.
So kind of tagging off of that one, what is ignoring the upfront investment of hiring somebody, training equipment, ignoring that? What is the yearly cost of entry level officer? Average
would have-
salary.
I'd have to look it up.
Okay, well, the state, its average is about 80 to 104K. It varies greatly, right? So what you guys have spent this year alone in overtime versus what you have budgeted is a difference of about 85,000. Sounds to me like that pays for another person. And if this is a consistent thing year over year, we might want, instead of looking at one vacancy, having two vacancies that we need to fill. Because I feel like that would just, if that one vacancy being filled isn't actually going to solve this, then it sounds like we need two. And you should be asking for two. Just based on the numbers.
Not for you.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
These are not crazy questions. Can you tell me what the acronym ICAC means?
Internet crimes against children.
Okay. And then, is Flock a brand name or is that also an acronym?
No, that's a brand name.
Okay, thank you. Just so I get it. Thank you.
My question's more for Cindy, I think then.
Pardon?
My question is more for Cindy.
Oh, okay.
Or
Well,
somebody
Go
else.
ahead.
When we're talking about discretionary funds, I guess I'm still confused on like, what is do we have like a gross number of like, these are the funds we have to divide up between all the departments of discretionary funding that's available, or?
When the mayor looks at the budget, we look at all the revenues and we take out everybody's salaries and benefits, their contracted, all their stuff. And then they go through and they have recommended funding for some of this stuff. So everything he talked about here is in the budget, everything he just discussed with his discretionary. What did not get funded for him was 2 police officers. And the cost on that is about, I'm gonna say about 140 between their salaries and the benefits.
For two or for one? Okay.
And that's about what that cost is. And there is not a pot of money right now. There's like $12,000 left. So that's
For them, but just like in general, is there?
in general, that's it. So, and it has to go by, so like water has their own funding source,
Mhm.
like everybody, but police and fire. And that's who comes through with, basically most of those discretionary funds. That comes out of the general fund. So we fund as much as we can through the levy lift because that goes completely to them. So we fund everything that we can through there. And then if there's anything left over in the general fund. So had we gone through and done this and there was $200,000 left, oh, sorry. Had we done that, we would be saying, okay, here's this that's unfunded and here's how much money you have to distribute. But they're just, there was enough that happened this year with sales tax dipping and with some things dipping. There just isn't anything left. We were able to fund all the current positions, able to fund all their contracted labor increases, able to contract all that, able to do some of this, some of their discretionaries. They tried to do everything that was a one-time expense this time to try to get those, like the flock cameras, all that stuff, to see a real value with that, those handheld radar units. There's real value with all of that. So those are all funded. But after we funded all that,
there's just nothing left. So what you have in front of you from the mayor is a balanced budget, and there literally is like $12,000 left.
So when we go over and overtime, where does that money come from?
That money comes from unspent budget in other funds, in other budgets. Like if I don't spend on my budget, that's where that comes from. And the mayor has an emergency, he has a contingency and he has emergency overtime money. And so we can pop that in there as well. There are some departments don't spend all their money. I mean, especially if they've had a vacancy. And what's interesting is although it looks really big for police and fire, with the vacancies that they have, and then it takes a bit to fill those. So while their overtime might be over, their regular wages are under. So they're not as over budget on the whole as you might think, because it takes a bit to get those people hired. And then that's some savings that they have in that department, and that helps fund that overtime piece. That's for both police and fire, that's worked out that way the last few years.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, what are some of the benefits of accreditation?
Oh my gosh. First of all, community support and community we want to let the community know that their police department is looked at and critically, and they're operating up to contemporary professionals. The other benefit to having an accredited department is there are grant opportunities that are only available to. We missed out on one at the beginning of the year, a $50,000 grant. 50,000 in the grant world may not be a whole heck of a lot, but it's a whole heck of a lot. And the other benefit is throughout the community, we develop confidence in the department and everything, but internally, the officers know that we're being held to a certain standard. So it's kind of a holistic thing, dealing with accreditation. I see a lot of benefit to it, and we were one time accredited, and I think that's a feather in the cap of not every department within the state of Washington is accredited. I think it's like 79 out of 300 agencies are accredited. And every year the legislature wants police departments to be accredited. They gave additional funding for agencies to pursue accreditation. And that was the money that I missed out on. If I would have demonstrated that we were in the process of getting accredited, we could have got that money. And it would have helped our accreditation program. But the money there's no tag on it. You can use it for whatever you need it. A lot of benefits to it.
Gentlemen?
I had a question, just real quick, Chief. One of our service levels, and when we talk about it in a comp plan or what we had as a police department policy, in that we never had less than 3 on a shift, or that there was always backup of 2. Do we still maintain that?
Yeah. The way the contract is a 2 on shift, except the staffing requirement prior to 2015. It wasn't in effect, so there were many we were working from. That's not. We are anytime right now that we have a vacation, a sick leave, or whatever, that really has a negative impact on our overtime budget.
So a lot of that comes from is it's a bargain requirement. But, but it's a safety issue as well. So it is what it is, but yeah, the overtime thing is not linear. I mean, one would think that you could add a person and have an equivalent drop, but it just doesn't work. Scale is an issue here for us in Cheney, so it is what it is. Thank you.
Vince, did you have anything?
I don't. Thank you.
Mark, as chair of the public safety, any comments?
We've talked a lot about a lot of these things, and so we've talked about all of this in the safety meeting, and so I feel pretty good about where the chief's going and great about the proposal.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add one last?
Sure.
You had mentioned the work of the support specialists. Would publishing your policy manual help reduce some of their workload in those records requests.
I think we discussed that. So
Yes,
I
we
am
did.
I'm absolutely in favor of that. And right, he was updating it again. With the latest updated.
Right, yeah, and just put revised or updated, whatever.
You come back on my
And then
computer.
my next thing, kind of along the same lines, has there been any thought to dedicating time or resources towards updating our emergency response plan in light of like the Gray Fire and that sort of stuff?
We really haven't had any real discussions about that. I went through, I got asked about it not too long ago, and I went through it. And I think, was it 2009?
That's what you said.
So they asked last.
Thank you very much. Oh, wait, we'll go ahead and ask, are there any questions from the visitors in the room or the visitors on Zoom? Mark, you're not seeing any hands fly up. All right, great. Thank you very much, Chief. Let us move on to fire.
I think I should know this by now, since we've been living on an online platform for a few years. I was going to open up with how happy I was to announce that I'm coming up on my 30th year professionally in the fire service. Since Chief Bechtel likes to set the bar on public service years, I guess I'm about halfway through my career. In my former life, I was an accreditation manager for fire service, and it's a continuous self-improvement process. So you measure yourself to a national standard and yourself against yourself. And with hopes that you continuously improve yourself, and that's the benefit of accreditation. No.
It is now.
Okay, I placed a copy up on the dais for you as well, in case you need that to reference off of. But
Thank
good
you.
evening, City Council. So I've been giving the same presentation, this sort of flair for the last 5 years. And by all means, if you are desiring different information or something changed, please let me know. Because I'm only giving you what I think you would want to know, and based on some research that I did when I got to the city. But welcome to the 2025 Fire Department budget presentation. I leave this slide up here. It's been the same slide for the last 5 years because, to be honest with you, I still run into community members, citizens, business owners that are dumbfounded on what the fire department does. There are still folks out there that believe that the only thing we do is go to fires, when 75 to 80% of what fire departments do is medical. So we do everything here for the city of Cheney. Why do we exist? Well, we believe we exist to be focused on the community and dedicated to the cause to serve our citizens, the CFD way. We also look at leaning forward to making sure that we're a healthy, strong force to be able to keep up with the demands and what the community expects and needs out of us, while looking at the future growth for regionalization and collaboration. So into the meat of the PowerPoint slide, just like what you heard from Chief Bechtel, we did a lot of changing this year as well. Change is hard, but we're evolving. And with evolution, we have to change with it. So trying to keep up with the change is going to be a consistent thread throughout my presentation tonight. But you can see in the past, it was myself and Olga Montiel, after 40 years of service, decided that, at age 70, she would retire. When she told me that, I said, shame on you, go back to work. So Chief Bechtel is still doing it. So, but Mark and I have been looking at this shift and changing for almost 2 years, and it was important for Mark and I to get it right, not get it fast, because we knew restructuring our department is not going to add some layers of consternation, but it's a finite amount of resources, and we're trying to make sure we're putting the right people in the right place, and we're able to keep up with the call volume and the demand that the citizens expect of us. So with that, we were able to get Jeff Anderson promoted to our first ever full-time career deputy fire chief. He has a passion in training with a background and a degree in training, and he's probably one of the best trainers and instructors I've ever seen in my entire career. Also with that, I'd like to point out and recognize our first ever full-time deputy fire chief fire marshal, Zach Heckquist came to us after 20 years serving in the military, was a civilian fire marshal over at Fairchild Air Force Base. Started his career active duty, got out, became a civilian firefighter in the Department of Defense, worked himself up from being a firefighter all the way up through captain, and then the what we call the assistant chief of fire prevention for the Air Force, and had done that for several years. So with that, Zach in 3 weeks went from 171 delinquent permit items down to 5 in 3 weeks. So it helps to have that skill set and that experience and expertise. It's a bit of a niche in the fire service. But I'll draw your attention to another change that we made. Thanks to the mayor's support with this and talking it through with Mark, is that we took our 4th firefighter and we made that a 4th lieutenant. And we're asking that lieutenant through a trial phase to go to what we call a cross shift floater position. As you can see on the hierarchy there, the structure, we have 3 individuals assigned to each primary shift, but then we had this sort of 10th odd position. And how can we maximize the potential for that person? Well, just in the month of November, we sat down with Lieutenant Holmes, asked him to pick the days that have already been pre-identified, vacation days, Kelly days off. We were almost able to pay for an entire year's worth of that salary increase just in the month of November. So really it's a stopgap. That floater position is someone who can float in and absorb what we would otherwise have to pay overtime for those positions. Additionally, as folks are retiring and moving on, we decided that captains was the right measure for a variety of reasons. I won't bore you with the details unless you really would like to know, but I did speak to our public safety committee regarding the stark differences between a battalion chief and a captain. You can see there on A shift, Battalion Chief Tim Steiner is still with us, which I'm grateful that he is. 30 some years serving at this fire department, between being a volunteer and a career firefighter. More than likely will be retiring by April of next year. At which point Lieutenant Chris Quick will get promoted to captain through the process, and then Colton Hunt will move up to lieutenant. All that to say this: we've got 2 vacant firefighters today. Come April of next year, we'll have 3 vacant firefighters. We've got 2 individuals that just announced that they're going to be on extended leave because they're with children, or expecting children, and another one who's having a hardship because of his father who's terminally ill. So the overtime projections for next year are probably not going to be what we're allocated, the $118,000. Draw your attention to our part-time volunteer firefighters. I looked up the national statistics this evening right before I came down, and it's hovering around 28 months is what a volunteer serves across the nation as a whole under the U.S. Fire Administration website. We're right around 21 months. I can't quite put my finger on why that is. We provide an insane amount of time in training for our volunteers. We provide them with the best gear and equipment we can offer. We have about 6 of our 18 volunteers that are with us for the long term, 6 that are with us for about 21 months on average, and 6 that are getting trained up just to leave in a year or 2. It's very cyclical. We lose some of those volunteers for career full-time positions, whereas we lose some pretty quickly, saying, hey, this is not what I thought, you know, what I had intended or envisioned for the career field. So I know it looks like we have a lot of staffing on paper if you count the career and the volunteers. Our volunteers only supplement evenings and weekends, not Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And the reason why, you know, Mark and I looked at restructuring the department is because we're getting so many doubled and tripled up emergencies at the same time. It allows myself and the 2 deputy chiefs to be able to flex and pivot around to take those 2nd and 3rd calls. Matter of fact, Jeff and Zach today went on 2 calls where the engine company wasn't able to make it because they got doubled up twice just today. So hopefully that'll restructure and allow us to be able to pivot and be able to meet the demands. I know it's a lot of data on one slide, and for that I do apologize. I draw your attention to the top left of that screen. That's where we landed on emergency calls for service in 2023. And where I'm estimating that we are going to land today, just simply based on January through September's call volume. So that growth came out to be that if we continue to see the same amount of the call frequency that we had January through September, you realize that for October, November, December, we're probably going to be north of 2,000 calls, which is every year is a record-setting year, not just for us, but just in fire and EMS in general. It's society. I tried to tease out for you, in case you were curious, on what's the majority of our medical calls. 74% of what we do is EMS. 81.5% of that is medical, where 15% of that's called trauma. But as you can see, the number one slot there for us here in Cheney is behavioral psychosis, overdoses, all those things that have to do with that mental health component. We do our best as an industry in the fire service to help with that, but we are just not trained clinicians. It's a pivot in society as a whole. It's not something new or different just for Cheney. It's worldwide, as you know. But the majority of what we do here in Cheney is got a behavioral psychiatric component to it. Tease that out. And then on the fire side, sort of the same thing. I gave you sort of our top. If you want to pull the numbers out, what do we primarily go to? With the university back up in full swing, we're starting to see a lot of fire alarms. We've had a few here in the recent past. Thankfully, the alarms did go off. We woke a young lady up last week to her smoke alarms going off and had smoke banked down her ceiling about that far. She caught her kitchen on fire. She woke up to a firefighter completely dressed out in their fire gear with their mask on. And she immediately jumped up and thought, who in the world are you? But we were able to convince her to get out now. So those are the little things we're seeing. Right down the middle lines where I'd like for you to focus the majority of your attention, if you don't mind. You know, we, like the police department, follow the national standards or national best practices. How do we measure ourselves to know if we're meeting the standard, not meeting the standard? Well, we all turn to the national standard. And our times on scene are getting longer. Why I believe that is because the majority of our calls are medical. And then if you look at our partners that provide an ambulatory service for the county, well, they're having a problem keeping people in their career field as well, riding ambulances. And then you compound that with taking ambulances to a hospital where you can count 10 ambulances at any time backed out of Sacred Heart or Deaconess waiting to drop patients off. Well, why is that? Because there's 200 people with the emergency department waiting to get seen as patients. Well, why is that? Because the hospitals are at capacity. It's a systemic issue. All right. And it bleeds all the way down to that we're staying longer and longer on scene, which means it's more likely that we're going to get doubled and tripled up. So it has a cost effect to that. One concern that I'm having that I'm keeping an eye on and trending for you folks as well is that, you know, what is our response time? Well, that is a national standard. The 5 minutes for EMS and 5 minutes and 20 seconds for fire is based on national standards, what we should be following. A lot of scientific data that has gone into that I won't bring. You know, that time, our response time is slipping. It's slowly slipping further and further away. And I believe it's largely because we're getting 2 and 3 calls at the same time. As you can see, we only met our goal 43% so far this year. We still have another quarter to go. The pulse or the heartbeat of the fire department. That is a really busy slide. And if you knew anything about medicine, you'd be tachycardic and probably wouldn't be around too much longer. I know it's busy and I apologize, but I wanted to give you the trend line on where we're at per day. As you can see, some days we're insanely busy with 13 to 14 emergencies in a singular day, where some days we only have 1 emergency. All that to say this, we don't get to really pick and choose when the emergencies come in and the frequency, or else it'd be really easy to staff when we need to and not staff when we don't have to. I have more data for you for that as well. I threw this together for the Public Safety Committee as it relates specifically to where should we be staffed? What does right size look like for the fire department? I didn't really know exactly what was going to come out of this until I sort of threw it down, and then I had the 2 deputies take a look at it. What if you do this and do that? Next thing you know, the slide just got busier and busier. I think it should be fairly easy to discern that although while our population in the city of Cheney has doubled, our emergency calls for service has more than quadrupled, is what I'm getting at. So then I thought, well, if we look at 1969, where the city brought on its first 3 full-time firefighters compared to the 10 operational firefighters that are on the line, what does that data mean? Well, that means that a firefighter at the top of the slide there is significantly busier today than they were back in 1969. And then I got to thinking, well, that's not fair to you, because where are all the years of volunteerism? I did not include them on this slide, and I can't go back and quantify. I could, it would just take me a long time. Quantify how many volunteers did we have in 1969, 1970, 71 to conclude the data. So after talking with Chief Anderson, he said, well, why don't you just compare today with maybe a couple different agencies in Spokane County to see if that means anything to us. So we pulled the 52,000 some odd calls that the city of Spokane goes on with their 375 uniformed firefighters. And I gave us an algorithm of 138 calls per firefighter for the city of Spokane. We're 178. We looked at Fire District 8. Same thing. There are about 113 emergencies per firefighter. So we're busy. We're really busy here at the city of Cheney. And oh, by the way, not to mention the state mandate and the federal mandates of how many hours of training. And it doesn't matter if you're a volunteer or you're a career firefighter, it still applies the same. So at a minimum, in the orange block there, we're required to maintain 340 hours of training per year, which is very difficult to obtain. So pulling up the doubled and tripled up calls, this was a brand new slide last year, and I just added 2024 into it. So far, what we have today, we're still sticking around that 21% of the time we're getting 2 calls at the exact same time. And when I mean the exact same time, I algorithm it to less than 10 minutes. And then tripled up about 3% of our total emergencies. We have 3 calls. Twice in 2024, we had 6 calls within about 50 minutes. Well, at that point, District 3's coming in, you're getting this guy out behind his desk, trying to figure out where the light switch is to turn your emergency lights on. And as you can see, we're about average, but just remind you that so far for 2024, that's just January through September data. We still have 3 more months of data to collect. So if you tease that out, that would be another 48 doubled up calls between now and the end of the year. It's another slide that I know is a little busy. I don't know why the fire service evolved into analytics. We're heavy analytics driven. I think that's how we just evolved to communicate. So if it's something that you're not understanding or you want me to change, by all means, please let me know. But what is the trend telling us? If I simply look at where we've been over a 10-year trend line, where we are January through September of this year, that estimates us around 2,058 calls coming in for the end of the year. Okay. If you look over at the top right of the screen or on your computer, your 5-year average by month, I like to pull that because it still tells me what is the busiest month of the year. And then I can use the data to see where the trend line is going to figure out how can we best accomplish all of our training. You know, what's the best time of the day to do training? What's the best month of the year to maybe do the heavy muscle movement trainings with other fire departments? Well, you can see on the bottom graph for 2024, a little bit of an anomaly there. January and February of this year actually were our 2 busiest months, whereas September and October are coming in as our 2nd busiest time of the year. So it doesn't really fit our 5-year trend line of October being the busiest month of the year. The red box just simply means it was an all-time record-breaking month. And then the red arrow is in the green arrow as I'm comparing that month as it's compared to that month last year. So we only had 2 months this year so far that we actually saw a decrease in emergencies as compared to those 2 months last year. Hopefully that makes sense. So if we take our 4.55% and we tease that out for the next 10 years, you know, we might be around 3,171 calls for service. Any questions with this?
When you, yeah, I did actually, the 340 hours of training per person or for the department?
Per person.
Okay,
to
that's what I
include
thought, but I wanted to clarify. Thank you.
What's going on in October?
Well, that's a good question, and I'd
I
be
have my
honest with you.
hypothesis, but.
I think it's, historically, I think it's our student population. You know, they hit end of August, beginning of September, they're nose down to the grindstone, figuring out who their teachers are, what classes are going to. And by October, I'm letting my hair down, having a little bit of fun.
Halloween.
But I've got a couple more interesting slides on our patient demographic that may contradict everything.
So Chief, I think also by that slide, that means we need a 10-year plan for employees that would match that number of 3,000 that would allow us to be able to care for our citizens.
Yeah, I think we're doing a really good creative way right now to try to diversify the portfolio, if you will, to meet demand. But, you know, it's at some point, we have to grow with it. And sadly, if society doesn't know where to stick a 911 call, generally stick it in the fire department. You know, that's why we go to cats in trees and snakes under barns and beehives on fence posts. And we're like, what? I never signed up to do those kind of things. And so it's just a testament of 911, somebody calls 911, it's either police or fire. And I think police has done a really good job of defining what they do. Whereas firefighters are sort of like, hey, we'll do anything, man. And it's like, well, no, you're going to climb a tree, and take a cat down. And you think, well, wait a second. I don't know if I signed up for that. So I'm sorry, did that answer your question? You are correct.
Well,
We need to continue to
yeah,
grow with.
we need to
the
continue to grow, and it's almost a new shift. Or at least additional people on each shift, so that you have 4, so that you can send 2 to a emergency and 2 to another one, because they're gonna be doubled up a lot more.
You know, and I know the Public Safety Committee has heard me talk a lot about it, so I apologize to you three. But the reason why we brought the volunteers back is I sat down with Mark and the mayor when I first got here. This is the only state I've lived in where they took the OSHA recommendation and turned it into state law, where we have to have 4 firefighters to go inside a burning house. It's called the 2 in, 2 out rule. So that's why we brought on our volunteers to try to just at least meet the state minimum requirement for a house fire. The doubled up and tripled up is starting to escalate just a little bit. We got to get creative to try to keep up with the demand. I thought I had a good answer for that with restructuring the department in the last 2 to 3 years. That's exactly where our call trend was. Wednesday, Thursday, Tuesday being the busiest days of the week. Next couple slides, I'll show you that's not the case for this year. So the age of our patients, well, you can see the 2022 through current 3-year trend. I mean, it's no surprise in any demographic, in any any place you live in the US, it's generally the aging population is who you go to the most. The anomalies, since we do have a university here in our backyard, is that 20 to 24-year-old. However, for 2024, I noticed that trend went significantly down. We're not going to as many 20 to 24-year-olds. Who are we going on? Well, it's our 35 to 44-year-old population spiked this year as compared to our historical trend.
Does that have to do with like the shift in our demographic too? as
I
we move
believe it
more
has
towards
everything to
veteran
do with the
community?
shift in our demographics. Yes.
Eastern's declining enrollment.
Yeah.
Well, and the shift we're seeing across higher ed in general is more non-traditional students, the older crowd going back to school, so probably contributes.
Incidents by day of the week, I was sort of alluding to that earlier. There's your average, around 227 incidences is the average. So what's above or below that? Well, historically Wednesday, I knew every Wednesday we were probably going to get inundated with emergencies. However, for 2024, Saturday, this year for 2024, Saturday has become our busiest day of the week. As of right now, thankfully, hopefully will have 2 volunteers in addition to the 2 career full-time firefighters working every Saturday and every Sunday if the volunteers show up. Which isn't always the case. And then I further tease that out by hours of the day, which hasn't changed a whole lot. Except for we get a little bit of a spike between 2 and 5 p.m. So knowing this information in my brain, I'm thinking between noon and 5 p.m. on Wednesday in October is probably a really bad day to try to plan my life, so. Yeah, I use this to try to help inform and educate the firefighters that, hey, if you're gonna go out and do some training, or if you have some, things you need to work on, earlier in the day is probably the better time to get that knocked out. So how mutual are we being with our partners? This really hasn't changed a whole lot as far as number sets go. 16 times we went into Fire District 3 this year. And 41 times we had other partners come and help aid us. I started to tease out the data and it got way too cumbersome for me, so I gave up. I have reason to believe if you just simply measured it in manpower hours, we're going into District 3 for fires. We're sending a brush truck or a fire truck with 2 to 3 people on it for 8 to 12 hours at a time. Whereas they're coming into the city for a 30-minute medical with one chief officer and a response vehicle. So if you tease that out, I would willing to bet that we're being good mutual partners with our other first responding agencies. Took the top 11, which gave us about 26% of our total call population. I know it's not really fair because every one of these, for the most part, is a large dormitory or a large complex, so a lot of people. Why I like to pull this data is to make sure that, where your fire stations are located. And I used to put a heat map on this, but Brett wasn't able to get me. I wasn't able to get to him in time to get me one back. But just to make sure that we are located, the fire station is located in the most advantageous place to be able to respond to where the majority of your emergencies are. I thought this was interesting data. I asked Shrek last year to pull this for me and they pulled it again graciously for me again this year. So how does Cheney measure up to the rest of the county? We feel busy, we seem busy, but is everybody busy? Well, as you can see, no, not everybody is busy except for Fire District 13 at the bottom, which is Newman Lake. Okay, but small numbers, 1 or 2 changes could vastly change the percentage there, but we're at 15.2% above where the average is 2.57 as far as total call volume. Fire District 1 is Spokane Valley Fire Department, just in case you're curious about that. They are officially a fire district. But we're busy. We're busy out here in Cheney. More of that budgetary stuff that I think I try to avoid because Cindy does such a good job for us. But, not a lot has changed year after year after year as far as where the proportion of those monies go to. Most businesses, most departments, you're 75, 80% just for your wages and benefits. And so the maintenance and operation budget, Cindy was able to help us through sitting down with us this year, go through our total budget line item by line item, because Olga used to do that for me, used to do that for us. I was completely lost. Cindy came up, sat down with Jeff and I, and she was able we were able to maybe better articulate to Cindy on some of the areas and the needs that we constantly had a little bit of a gap in our operation and maintenance budget. And she was able to help us get a little bit more money in there. So very appreciative of that. The overtime is what it is. I'm going to do my best to try to keep it at that mark, but we've already surpassed that this year, and I am predicting next year is going to be far worse with having 2 probationary firefighters and 2 individuals as of right now on extended leave. Any questions about the budgetary slide? I apologize. Lack of sufficient data.
Anyone? No? Good.
So for our discretionary request items, this is a mastermind of Jeff here behind me. Because we always try to figure out, hey, it's not fair to you to come to you any given year and say, this broke, it cost X thousands of dollars and we need to replace it right now, and never give you the warning or the ability to understand that we have needs. So we came up with this algorithm just to help maybe portray what is most important, what is critical. Well, we felt what was critical is something that has failed, or it's going to cause a safety issue or have an adverse negative impact on the operations. If it's something that we feel is urgent, well, we're anticipating it failing or expiring, but we have a little bit of time and bandwidth to make a financial decision there. And then, of course, serious consideration is, you know, a lot of little things moving into the future that in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, we need to probably have that on the radar that that's going to have to be fixed, replaced. So with that, that's how we in the fire department derive our discretionary request items. And then I just assign it as critical, urgent, or needs consideration, serious consideration. So before you tonight, you know, we went down and talked to Mark Mayer and Cindy was there as well. And I'm looking for a response rig for our 2 deputy fire chiefs. Because, you know, I got a fire marshal that's driving all over the city a lot of the time right now, because that's what his job requires him to do. Go out and do site inspections and go down to UB constantly and then get out for the second and third emergencies to help offset the doubled and tripled ups that we're seeing. Our apparatus bay ramp repair, it's just, we've got a rut going down the front of the station. It's just getting bigger and bigger. So it's something we brought forward last year. The 6,426 price difference is really if you want to go with asphalt or concrete, 20-year fix or 100-year fix. So that's something that Mark and the mayor and Cindy and I have discussed for last year and moving into this year for 2025. Hoping to see if we can't maybe seize an opportunity and join a little concrete with another concrete project in the city and get a little cost savings out of that. Controlled narcotics security is something that we are lacking in the fire station. Yes, we carry Schedule 2 and Schedule 3 narcotics, especially for our paramedics. There's an opportunity for us to make sure we're securing that better. We have it secured for ourselves, but if someone was to drift or walked into the fire station, it could cause a concern. So hopefully we'll be able to package something together and maybe able to utilize some of our opioid funding for that number 3 discretionary request item. And then the apparatus bay door replacement, it's just because they're old. We can't get parts for them hardly anymore. Can't get them fixed or repaired. They're single pane glass. They leak a lot of our energy out. And is it a critical thing? Probably not. Probably more of an urgent or needs serious consideration moving into the future. And then, of course, we have an ongoing list of little things that we've identified that we need to discuss or talk about, you know, and Councilman Schmidt, I know you said $1 million, but we did a little homework. It's actually 1.9 to 2.1 million in today's market for a new ladder truck. Just cost is just off the charts.
Chief.
Sure.
Could we just talk about the ladder truck just for a minute? Because I do understand that you have it under the serious consideration, but it really hovers between that and critical when you consider that we can't go out and buy one on a shelf at Walmart tomorrow. It's going to take years to get it. So I think it's something we probably need to think about putting more in that critical situation, because if we wait till it's like completely broke down the road and we can't use it at all to try to get one, and then we can't get one for 4 years, then we're sitting there with a breaching contract with Eastern and other things as well. And in between then and now, we talk about this every single safety meeting. It's in repair every single time we talk. And not cheap repairs either. We're talking about massive repairs. So, in fact, right now it's at a place where, right, we might actually not be able to use it anymore. You did. Okay.
A little bit of baling wire. We got it working.
Right, yeah. Okay. So I think it needs to move a little bit from that serious consideration to that something to where we're making a decision, even if we have to move money around a little bit to make a decision to get it sooner. I think the challenge is just the amount of time that it would take to get one.
We're being quoted by 2 major manufacturers. So we're looking at 3 to 5 years for what they consider a specialty vehicle. Ladders, a lot of big departments have a ladder truck. They're designed to crank out fire engines. So they got to stop production of a fire engine to produce something like a ladder truck. So they don't produce as many ladder trucks as they do fire engines. And so we're being told 3 to 5 years is the average in today's market. From the time you lock something in till the time it's delivered to your doors, 3 to 5 years. The other part of that is that major company Pierce is who we're probably looking for, because if I could just be blatantly honest, we haven't been too happy with our current engine manufacturer. They haven't made good on some critical failures that we've had. And so we wanted to possibly look at the tried and true manufacturer that a lot of the fire districts in Spokane have reverted back to. They're a nationwide company. We invited them in, sat down with them. Said, hey, we're looking at a 10% inflation CPI per quarter moving into the future. So on a $2 million ladder truck, that's a $200,000 adjustment just in inflation. If we're setting 100,000 aside, well, we just lost 100,000. So I don't know where that point of no return or diminishing return is. And it's a huge purchase. It's a significant purchase.
So I do seem to lose track of time. So seems like just yesterday we bought a fire truck. When was that? What year did we get the
It was
last?
6 years ago.
Oh.
Bought engine one.
Guys go through vehicles faster than my husband.
Thank you.
Is
You know,
engine one the
the-
ladder truck? No.
No,
When did we buy
no,
that?
where did we buy the ladder truck is what she asked.
20 years.
20 years. Oh, I'm
The
sorry.
ladder truck is 20 years. Most big city departments like City of Spokane, City of Seattle, Chicago, New York. They generally have a brand new truck on their front line, what they call it, for 10 years
Mhm.
because it gets run to death. And then they move it to a tertiary or a fire station that's really slow moving
Mhm.
for another 5 years. And then they have a succession plan to replace it after 15 years. So 15 years is the national average for a fire vehicle.
Okay.
But it would be our hope to not get anything nowhere near with all the bells and the whistles and the change orders, and let's keep it basic.
Thank you.
Can we get one with just a ladder?
On a pickup truck.
Save $1 million, go down to Paul's price range.
But I don't disagree with you. I really think that's, you folks need to help determine. That's another huge financial obligation that the city's gonna have to enter into. You know, we did extremely well saving up $1 million. It seems like, wow, that's not even gonna cover it. We need another $1 million in today's market just to be able to make that purchase. Probably the last year I'll leave this slide up here, and I hope that it is enduring. The university has made some commitments to committing to this program, the EWU Cadet EMT program. Where Jeff Anderson back there will spend 3 months out of his life in January, February, March, and he will go up to the university and he'll play adjunct professor for 2.5 months. And he'll crank out 20 students that are probably have the best training and knowledge that any EMT student can gain. But we would like to maybe pivot to see if the university could commit to something a little more long-term. At that point, the gentleman that Jeff's been working with will be his 3rd year. He teaches anatomy and physiology, another amazing instructor who is also now a volunteer firefighter with us. He will be able to apply to get his senior EMS instructor credential. You got to do 3 years at a minimum to get that credential to teach EMT, advanced EMT, or paramedic. So Jeff, after next year, will be able to throttle back and allow Nate Lawton to take the helm or the reins over as long as the university supports that. So we've seen a lot of good fruits of that hard labor come out of that program. All right, just a couple more slides here for you. So just like Chief Bechtel and Cindy, you know, it's just been a really busy year, a great year. I talked about restructuring the fire department. Jeff worked really hard on revamping our operational run cards. We call it our playbook. If this, then that, if engine one's on an emergency and we get a second call, how does the computer pick up the algorithm? Do you want that 1010 or hard coded to another career fire truck or just any fire truck? It could be a District 3 volunteer. And so he spent a couple weeks just going through that and then went down and sat with Shrek and they ran a bunch of test models to make sure that we're getting it right. We're right sizing our complement of resources coming in when we need them the most. Got some good grant initiatives. Not all that money is coming to the city of Cheney. It's a little over 200, about 250,000 total. But that's a lot thanks to Jeff getting promoted, getting selected, and then promoted to be the county chair of the training chiefs committee for the entire county. So $137,000 in medical gear and equipment is coming from our EMS Trauma Care Council to go out to all the fire departments with some medical gear, along with all the rescue task force, which is the body armor, the Kevlar helmet, to be able to go in with law enforcement in an active shooter situation. So those two sort of go together. And then we were successful on our Department of Ecology grant to get some much needed upgraded gas monitors and detectors. We are currently still working on bargaining a mutually beneficial contract with our firefighter labor group. You know, Tim was instrumental in bringing an initiative to not just to the county, but to the state level. He recognized that, you know, you go to the city of Spokane with your food truck, and then that fire inspector or fire marshal may charge you 50 or $100 to bless you off to serve food in the city of Spokane. And then that next weekend you come to Cheney and we do the same thing. Could we not standardize the process? State loved the idea and they came out with official logos and stickers and they did a whole bunch of training. And so that was a great initiative that was largely championed here on the backs of your Cheney firefighters. Established first ever training for the County Fire Area Coordinator Program. I was instrumental in helping our up and coming deputy and assistant fire chiefs in the county. It's the only county I've ever lived in where we had this sort of fire area coordinator position. I am the area coordinator this week. I was the area coordinator during the Gray fire. And all that simply means is that either I'll go to dispatch or I'll go to the incident and say, hey, incident commander, it's your fire, your incident. What can I do to help you? What resources do you need? And to make sure I'm looking at the global picture and it's not vacuuming and sucking in all resources in one little area and leaving ourselves exposed for another emergency. And then, of course, I helped champion Vista's new public safety power shut off. I think they should have put me on their payroll after the third interview, but and we did so much more than that. Training is the bread and butter of what we do. If we're not fighting fires or going to medical calls, we should be training to fight fires and going to medical calls, period. That's just our industry. So a lot of training, and Jeff is instrumental in leading the training initiative for your city fire department to make sure we're in compliance. You'll note that the volunteer firefighters, we can't meet the state mandated requirement. Jeff's, talking to all the training chiefs in the county, nobody can meet what's state mandated for volunteers. It's hard enough for the career to meet the state mandated requirements, but he developed a standard or an algorithm that we can measure our volunteers and what we feel they need to be best trained in. And we met about 80% of that target goal for this year so far. Highlighted a few things here. Both Jeff and Chief Equist he was still on Fairchild's payroll, actually. We got a bunch of folks promoted to brand new positions. Talked about those brand new captains and those brand new lieutenants. They're brand new in their career in those positions. When we all leave and go home tonight, they're in charge of the city, and that could be overwhelming. So these two gentlemen behind me actually put a really good 4-week training program together to make them feel more confident and comfortable when to make the right decision or when to pick the phone up and either call Mark or myself or them to get some more help. Jeff was instrumental as the county training chief to put all fire and all law enforcement on the same page in the county. Has never been done before that I'm aware of. So rescue task force, it's all over the place in the nation. There's no clear guidance that says nationally, this is what it should look like. This is a national umbrella, and people have developed curriculums and have made a lot of good money off of it. But, Cheney and the city of Spokane had a very similar format. Spokane Valley was doing something one-off with the sheriff's office. City of Airway Heights was doing a modified version of both. None of us were doing the same thing consistently when it came to an active shooter. So Jeff has sat down with fire and law enforcement over the last year and has slowly started walking a unified approach in that's going to be backed with a good training platform. So I'm really happy with that initiative. Lot of maintenance, constant testing, all of our ladders, our fire hose, our equipment, it has to be tested annually. Just the nature of the beast. So we got a lot of good testing done. Everything that we are mandated and required to do, we're able to get that all accomplished. Yes, we got the brand new air compressor in.
Compressor.
Got it installed yesterday and we're waiting on the final pieces to come in. Constant, a lot of things to focus on in the upcoming years. A lot of good things. We got a brand new fire marshal that comes with a lot of good expertise and knowledge. There is a whole umbrella and platform that in the fire industry that falls underneath the fire marshal or fire prevention campaign. So I'll be asking, Zach to help champion and lead some of those initiative and a cause here for the city. Community risk reduction programs, school campaigns, teaching the kids to stop, drop and roll, change the batteries out, going out and doing pre-fire planning. All those are tertiary to just the bread and butter of doing inspections and reviewing pre-fire plans, building plans. Refine expectations for our employees is something that Mark and Jeff and I have talked about with the union. And we are wanting to incentivize our firefighters to what we call a STEP program. So you're not a lieutenant in that fire department for 15 years and you have done nothing to self-improve, to grow. So we're walking in with their concurrence on the labor group side to make sure that they're always looking for self-improvement, professionalism, and they're bettering themselves year after year after year versus just sitting around and getting stagnant and earning a nice paycheck, just to be blunt about it. Fitness and wellness initiatives. We want to continue to make sure we're focusing on that, not just with fire, but our law enforcement brothers and sisters as well. Regionalization, that's something that Jeff's working hard on. A training consortium, something we're playing with. A few of the training chiefs reached out to the west side of the state, which is very popular, where many fire departments come together and then they have a training consortium where it's a cost share, an economy of scale share. So we don't have to have 15 different fire training centers and all the gear and equipment, the same training that we all have to duplicate over and over again to right size that. So excited to see where that potentially goes in Spokane County. Something we need to strongly consider. We have taken pride here in Cheney of having some of the best trained, best equipped EMS providers. Well, with Tim Steiner retiring, that'll leave us 2 paramedic and 2 advanced EMTs on shift. So about 40% of the department, when I got here 7 years ago, 90% of the department, I was the lowest trained medically compared to the department when I got here 7 years ago. So we need to look at maybe hosting or teaching an advanced EMT class here locally, because it's the right thing to do. Paramedic is just such a hard gap. 18 months, $18,000 to $22,000 versus advanced EMT 6 weeks. 6 weeks? No, 250 hours. You could teach that in 3 weeks. 250 hours for, I don't know, $2,000 a person. And what Dr. Nani in Spokane County allows us as EMS providers to operate at an advanced level is almost at paramedic level. So the juice is well worth the squeeze to become an advanced EMT, if that makes sense. And with that, do you have any burning questions? I apologize for.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Yes.
Just to clarify on the priority list, because I thought that there was a different number there at some point about the vehicle. Is it for 2
On our
vehicles?
discretionary request items?
Yes, sorry, yes, on the discretionary request.
Did I accidentally leave the old number in there?
No, it says 90,000. For some reason, I was thinking it was for 2 vehicles.
It was initially and then one was funded, yes.
Okay, so 1 vehicle, 90,000, and that will help cut response times. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, the goal of restructuring, the entire fire department was to try to keep up with the second and third calls, which at that time, the majority of the calls were on Wednesday from noon to 5. This year, it's Saturday. Hopefully over the next few years, we'll see if that changes or not, but we got a finite number of resources, and I figured if we got a couple more of the chief officers on days that were a constant, it not only helps satisfy that 2 in, 2 out requirement that the state requires us Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 while we're here, but then we could also pivot and go on 2 and 3 emergencies, diversify that.
So I think part of that goes back to the $12,000 that Cindy mentioned earlier. There's no money.
But this is approved, correct?
This is.
What? Yeah, that's what okay,
Yeah.
But
so
the-
it's coming out of the fire reserve fund, it's not coming out of the general fund.
okay.
And that's money we try to typically save for fire truck, but
Mhm.
in this instance, we could, with 2 people there on days, I mean, there was an obvious need to have a vehicle for them to be able to
Mhm.
drive.
Okay.
so.
Okay.
So you're only able to.
Mhm.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, poor Jeff is driving around the county every week in his personal vehicle, attending meetings, and he's grateful to do it, but I would prefer that he's in something he could get back to the city if we needed him in a hurry. So this will help with some.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll start and then Vin said something.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, chief. This is all really, really good information. I think one of the things that we've noticed on the safety committee that I just want to make us aware of, and I think I mentioned a little bit before, but I think what we're seeing in the fire department and a little bit in the police department too, is I think we're going to need to start being proactive more than reactionary. And that means from a budget standpoint too. And so with employees, with shifts, I think as we grow in police and fire in how many things they're responding to daily, we're gonna see a decline in service, and we'll also see people wanting to move to a different department that doesn't require them to be so burdened with things. So I think we could have an attrition if we don't figure out what we're gonna do there. And so, and if we start to see that attrition after a plateau and we start to see attrition, it'll be really difficult to pull out of that.
So
And
we
so-
did do the research on that. It's $360,000 to $450,000 to replace a firefighter in today's market.
Yeah.
So we lost a firefighter to go to another department somewhere else. By the time we spent 2 years getting him up to the level of replacement, you're about $360,000 to $450,000.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, and with equipment and a truck and all that, I think we're just gonna need to have, I mean, I'm super appreciative of this budget, but it almost looks like we need a 5-year plan. That we're saying, hey, this is what we need to do financially, and this is what we need to do on the employee side for the next 5 years, setting goals to hit those with police and fire.
I was just gonna ask about some of the discretionary requests. I don't, obviously I don't sit on public safety anymore, but the response vehicle, are we talking like an F-150? F-250?
Yeah, just an agile vehicle that they can get around in, no different than what I have as well. An F-150, or a lot of fire folks are moving to SUVs again. We just sort of saw that ebbs and flows.
So what is the 90K put in for? I mean, is it a specific rig or is it kind of open-ended?
Open-ended, open.
And then on the narcotic security, I guess I think of a hospital, kind of a locked closet. Is that what the 30K is? Or are we talking like a safe?
Well, we have an ad hoc safe. You know, it would be like, I guess, the police department going down to Walmart and just buying a little Liberty safe to store all their ammunition in. And so it's sort of what we have for the narcotics when they have an approved narcotic safe that has other capabilities like tracking. So if someone was to get into the safe and then something was to end up missing and the paper log isn't synchronized, that is a huge, you know, Dr. Dirks, who's our fire department physician, could. So we really need to make sure we're looking at something that's tracking, timekeeping, time stamping, stuff like.
So I guess how do hospitals do it? Isn't it like a code? Everybody has their own code, get into a locked closet?
That's a
or-
great question. I don't even know.
You're a
Jen.
key, yeah, we used to do some of this stuff where I worked, and yeah, there's devices where everyone has their own special, whether it's a code or a key that keeps track of who entered and who exited.
Sense. And then that would be a paper log or a computer log that says that you were in that safe at that time.
Yeah, electronic log.
I mean, the only reason I ask, I mean, 30 to 35 grand is a pretty tall order for a safe. I mean, I work in a controlled office site. I get to use my phone to get in and out, you know, who gets in and out. So I'm just saying, I think there may be some technological advances that we
Could be.
may look into that we may not have to spend 30 to 35.
Well, we were looking at, in addition to that, some security measures getting into the room itself.
And then,
Throwing a package together.
well, no,
It's-
I just, like I said, I just wanted to get a couple more details on
Sure.
this. So the apparatus bay repair, that's so much concrete for the entire driveway, is it?
That entire front ramp in front of, before you come onto Ford Street, between the bay doors and replacing all of that. with
That's 4
concrete.
bays,
Say again.
3 bays, 4 bays, 5 bays. Okay. I'm just, like I said, I think
We have
about
3
cubic yards, I
bays.
guess, so I'm just trying to figure out how much we're talking here. And the 64 was for concrete,
That's for asphalt.
that's for asphalt.
The
Okay.
higher end was for concrete, of which we think that there could be a cost savings there. One, if we were to maybe pair that up with another major project going on in the city, and talking to Todd, I believe that we may have an opportunity to save a little bit more by doing some of the debris removal ourselves as a city. There's a heavy cost with that, with them not only tearing up the current asphalt, but actually hauling it away and disposing. It. Could be a bit of a cost savings.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else?
Just a quick clarification. Well, on that driveway, I do recall it was asphalt. There were certain summer days you couldn't park the vehicles outside on apron, yeah.
Mhm.
On the, on our fire equipment reserve, do we have 1 million set aside for the, or is it just 900,000?
There's a million set aside right now for a new fire truck, just sitting in the general fund in a restricted reserve fund. This year, in order to even make this year balance, so I don't have the $100,000 being saved this year. We had to kind of pop that out and use that for just general operations. And so hopefully that will, in the levy, that will save that again next year. But additionally, then they have their fire equipment reserve fund that I think has maybe $400,000 in it, something like that, 354, and then we're still waiting on insurance to give us the money for the one vehicle that was destroyed in the fire. And so I think the load that being is about 4, so altogether. So we're going to end up spending that 90 out of that one. So that 90 was for one rig, but it also included all the equipment that they needed on it in order to make that be a vehicle that could respond. That's why 90 seems so big.
If I may add to that, the new engine, I think we financed that for 10 years.
13, 2031.
Got about 6 more years to go on that.
Financing program that cannot exceed 13 years. And it was about a $600,000 correctly, what we financed there. So we paid a piece of that on our own, and then we're just paying that off over those 13 years. And it's about a 55, I think, annual debt service on that. So if that was to be double of that, depending on that, I think you could probably think that one might be about, between $100,000 and maybe $125,000 annually if we had to end up borrowing a bigger amount than that. Or if we're able to save it on our own and keep it to that, what that might be, but that's a good at least example. Of what we can do state program, and it's a really nice program. It's state treasurer does it. You don't have to go through any kind of bond issues or this or that. It's all just for them, and they take care of it, and you have to explain exactly how you're going to pay it back. So we got approved because we committed our levy lift funds for that. And so that's where we got approved for that. So if that was gonna happen in the next couple of years after I'm gone, you guys have to figure out then, right, what are you gonna take away from the levy lift in order to replace it with that? And then that won't be funded anymore. And right now our levy lift funds working.
I guess my point was, first time, 8 years or whatever, that we're not gonna put away $100,000 for a ladder truck for 2025. We're gonna fall back on. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or observations? I'll go ahead and ask anyone in the room who would like to speak or our Zoom guests. If not, I'm gonna close the public hearing and we're gonna take a 5-minute break. Because I said so.
The good say so. Thank you.
5 plus or minus. How's Mrs. Gomez?
I'm doing okay.
3 more resolutions. It was, my wife's cousin. They flew to Europe or Greece or something. It was 12 hours. He never got out of the seat once. I don't know, I guess.
Heavy sleeping pills.
Anyhow, when they landed, he got up and passed out.
Because he probably wasn't wearing compression socks.
He had a blood clot.
Yep, it's called Humanics. I was gonna show you if you wanted the safes, the thumbprint applicated. And so we have had a couple.
He didn't make it. Passed away. Just like that. Yeah, those blood clots.
They're no joke.
Like it.
And the ones in your legs, they'll drop fast.
Yeah, yeah, hit him. Never did get out.
Nice to meet you. My oldest is Zach.
The main one for the station.
It is a great name.
Each one of those.
Hey, welcome aboard. Appreciate that. Fire marshal, huh?
So they're like a special.
Yeah, that was always kind of just jumbled in with other positions and.
We could either.
So
Yeah,
appreciate
all
that.
the EMS room, or we could just increase-
Yeah, yeah.
5 days a week, since there's way.
Well, then we had.
I was gonna say, we might be able to use some of
Builders
the stuff out of my
complaining
car.
because they can't get their permit.
I can't get a hold of.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can use the opioid to
Yeah,
cover that.
it's 35,000 out of 170,000.
That just came up
So
here,
we're like, hey,
couple
here's
weeks
something
ago.
that he was general fund.
but good to have you on board and.
Yeah.
Because
I was
we're like.
gone
"Crap,
last
if
week
we
for a
get
conference,
spent
but
all
met a
the
lot,
time
got a lot
over
of the state
those
fire
years,
marshals conference.
Sure.
Which
And I don't
coming
wanna
from the
lose
federal
everything.
government, they don't know how to
So
spend
it's
money
not-
on
that's
total
not
because
a-
it's new fiscal
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
So I never got to go to it.
Oh,
I've
I
been
should
a fire
have
marshal for
passed.
7 years.
Is that right? Yeah, yeah.
And so now it's like, geez, like, yeah, just go. And I'm like, all right. And so finally got to make those relationships. And it was eye opening. So
Yeah, no, good deal.
Super good stuff there.
No, a lot of people, there's so much through prevention and training and all that, and then, well, for the permitting and all that, but the stuff,
There's a lot. It depends on how much you want to.
yeah,
Where does the city want it?
yeah,
How much do you want to invest in it? Because it's a lot of manpower.
yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? So we can split it. And I found that was one thing that state farm marshals is finding new ways, becoming innovative. Just honest with people, because a lot of those farm marshals. They got,
Yeah.
Seattle's got 87 fire
Oh, yeah.
inspectors.
Yeah.
They got 30 people on public.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, so tell me how you did it if you're buying $10.
Yeah, yeah.
Streak the number down.
But it's effective though. I mean, without that, just think,
Yeah.
the property loss,
I couldn't make it. I
life
had to get up
safety
and
stuff, I mean.
Look at, I mean, one of the big things we, one of our initiatives this year was home auction fire, and people on O2.
Yeah,
Post
8 o'clock
COVID.
came in.
Oh, yeah.
And then got home on Friday, Saturday morning, a couple of
I didn't look, no.
You know, there's, I mean, it's not proven yet, but.
Yeah, was that what you thought that was?
He was on O2. It could have been a heating device.
Yeah, but-
He's in an RV parking lot, heating
So
device.
all the low rise, it's all the hay costs.
I can imagine that flash.
That you can't put stuff. This is for.
So one of the things I want to do in the city of Cheney,
Like today,
is there's state funded or state
They could
reimbursed.
set it, it's a couple bucks.
So when you get that runaway, because a lot of those people smoke.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Which is like.
But
I'm gonna type it into my notes.
That works.
So a vacancy tax, do you know,
When I get caught, it just shuts off.
you know any jurisdictions that have it?
Yeah,
in the face.
that's it.
But then it stops, so it doesn't go to the two cylinder. And
No, I.
Yeah, they're dragging the turning hose.
It's out of.
That's correct. It's really is.
A lot of ways to die, but appreciate you getting on board. Welcome aboard. It's a great place, even though we hear all the challenges we have budget wise, it's still a cool setting.
I mean, I grew up in Diamond Lake, so I'm from the local.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, not the immediate, but local
Well,
area.
yeah,
A lot
used
of
to come down there, so I'm just thinking.
I played football since then, Eastern.
Sure.
As a high school.
Yeah. Good deal.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Yeah. we look forward to seeing you.
Right.
Hey, good to meet you.
Yeah.
We all meet up.
Yep.
Hurricane, some curly. Hey, you might.
That's how hard.
That's amazing.
There's like 10 people.
Here we go.
How you doing?
Nice.
We're like halfway through,
Finish
right?
there.
We're like
How's that brother
halfway
of yours
through the
doing?
agenda.
I haven't seen him.
We're like halfway through the agenda.
Yeah.
No,
The rest will go fast,
The
yeah.
rest will go fast.
I see him on my, door
That was
camera.
awesome.
We just gotta stop thinking about it.
I couldn't remember if we're gonna be in trouble.
Let's go ahead and get back in session and then everybody can go home here eventually. Let's see, so we are now at, well, hang on there. DNR wildlife, or excuse me, wildland fire mitigation plan, sorry.
Evening. Yes, this, the House legislator passed, House Bill 10. Hire a consultant to make a wildfire mitigation plan, standardize it throughout the state, because obviously we're dealing with a lot of wildfires, a lot of fuel out there. With the standard plan, they submitted to all the utilities out there. For us to address our own issues, the city has about 2% in fire mitigation. Most of that is done by taking care of vegetation underneath and near the lines. That's our big risk. The line breaks, hits the ground, tries to restart, dry tinder. So thank you for allowing that purchase a couple of years ago, because it does pay. So with the standardized plan, I took 15 pages and edited 7, kept the original format on record, so we can go back there and see if there's other areas or sections that they gave to us that we can incorporate again later if dynamics change. But our plan is fairly simple, since city fire department responds to all our issues. Then we're looking at the city of Spokane and FEMA. Having said that, I put the plan together, I submitted it to the Works Utilities Committee, they had a review of it. So what I have here is the finalization. It is to be submitted by October 31st. And then every 3 years after that, be approved. In that 3-year period, we'll use the safety committee meetings with the light department to review each month any incidents and corrections, changes, or revisions. So that's what we are. And then, of course, any input from anybody else within the community or within the city staff. Said that. City passage is resolution 7.
Your Honor,
Is there any questions?
Steve noted it was in front of the Powers Committee. I forgot to ask, Steve, did we get reimbursed from DNR for doing this work?
For this work?
Yeah.
No.
What do you mean? It's an unfunded mandate by the Washington?
That's not.
Yeah.
I move for the passage of resolution F-297.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All righty then.
Yeah. I would like to make one comment. Steve, I loved your addition there to during a red flag warning, we got a one shot. And I think that's really important and a great addition that we've done because as soon as that line hits hits the ground, it'll go out. And,
Yes.
Malden is a good example of why you need that.
That is not the
One shot.
standard across public
Yeah, it's not the standard.
But we were doing,
Yeah. And yeah, had it been the standard 4 years ago, Malden would
we
not
were
have put
doing
it
that
down.
without having to have a mitigation. plan.
Yeah. Right.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Now we
Thanks,
get to
Steve.
put it in writing and be proud of it.
Yeah, it looks good. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Ordinances.
Oh.
No, wait a minute. I'm sorry.
More resolution.
Archaeology and Historic Preservation Grant Award, sir.
Anything?
I thought you just came because
No,
you were.
I was
just
so interested in presentations, yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, this is the historical preservation. We wrote a grant, got a 6,500. There is a large match, but we're able to, since this is federal side of the grant, we're gonna use our consultant money. Comprehensive plan. So really this does is it updates our inventory, takes a look at our municipal codes to that end, updates that. We do have some staff time involved with that, and we do have that parceled out to some of our consultant work to adopt it into the comprehensive plan. Basically, we do have a historical. Questions, there's not a lot of strings to that, just a couple of public process.
Get it done.
don't wanna play? I'll move for passage of, as opposed to the other one, this one did come a little money, but I'll move for passage of resolution F-298.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Thank you. Now, ordinance Y 76.
Thank you. Y 76 is our property tax levy ordinance. I might point out, as the chiefs were going through their budget presentations, I made an error on section 3. It should say 563,100, not 536,100. So I've already corrected that for when you look at this for the second. And then what happens is after this gets passed, I go ahead and I have this levy certification that I have to get to the county before a certain date. And then that will have both our general levy, our levy lift, our EMS levy, and our general obligation bond all on there. So they will be taken care of. So I'm just asking for the first reading of this and a deferral to next council meeting, please.
No questions. I'll move for the first reading of ordinance Y-76 and title and summary form only to be placed for us the next city council.
Second.
Carrie,
Have to take a vote first.
I'm sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Carrie.
Ordinance Y 76, an ordinance setting the regular property tax levy for the year 2025 and providing for the effective date hereof.
All right, we'll revisit this at a future date. Hey. Budget discussion, I think we've had enough. Just saying.
Yeah.
And we'll have plenty more opportunities. Staff reports.
Just very quickly, commend Todd for getting ahead of the snow plowing season. They had their first sort of organization meeting to get things lined up since it could potentially be a heavy snowfall year. And my second staff report is just get out and vote, people. There's some important elections going on. Please get out and vote. That's it.
Thank you. I'm not going to report yet because I'm not really the mayor. Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you. Just real quick. Let's see, I attended the AWC membership expo in Chelan about 2 weeks ago, just for one day. And joined Carrie at her table. She was gracious enough to let me sit there. As always, it's very good information. That's all on employee benefits for medical. That's it. Thank you. Good presentations, by the way, by our public safety.
Mr. Barthel.
I will echo that too. Great presentations tonight. Really quick, I did attend the SWAC meeting. Last week, they had a informational item on paint care Paint Care recycles, paint. We actually all pay for it when we're buying a gallon. That's what the 95-cent surcharge is. They're pushing to try to get 1 million gallons in Washington State. They're almost there. And yeah, that was the big discussion at the SWAC. So,
And so we're all supposed to take our paint to the,
yeah, so Cheney Clean Sweep does have kind of an annual event that they touched on. Sometimes we have it, sometimes we don't, but at the waste to energy, you can't bring your paint. Yeah.
okay,
Bring it in oil-based form. They actually use that for fuel, and all the latex-based, water-based is recycled. So
good to know.
riveting stuff.
Good to know. We know who to ask.
Million gallons.
Ms. Balella?
I attended the opioid abatement council last week and, just kind of got updates regionally that everybody's doing. I think most of us are still just trying to figure out what we're supposed to do with those funds and how best to use them, so. Keep bringing your guys' ideas to the council.
Thank you. Anything else?
Great presentations. That's it.
Nothing, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'll just echo that. Thanks so much for your presentations, and I'll just reiterate, I think it's time for us to start thinking about 5-year plans. Because we're at a place where reacting to what's happening will not do. So.
Thank you. I will just say, again, thank you, staff. Thank everyone who came. Some staff has left, and I really appreciate how well everybody is just really right on. I mean, it's great presentations this year. And then I would just like to say, I apologize. Last council meeting, I did not communicate well my concerns about a specific issue. And I'm just not even going to say any more than that because I'll probably just get in trouble again. So with that,
Second.
we're out of here.